India is back in Washington's crosshairs. Just a day after mocking Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in public, US President Donald Trump is doubling down, this time not through executive orders, but through the US Congress. American lawmakers are now considering a powerful new sanctions bill, and if it becomes law, India could face tariffs as high as 500%. Yes, 500%. But there's a twist. Trump's favorite weapon, tariffs, may itself be legally hanging by a thread. So let's break down what's happening. The bill. The legislation is called the Sanctioning Russia Act of 2025. On paper, the bill targets countries that continue to purchase oil from Russia. In reality, it dramatically expands the president's power to impose extreme trade penalties. The bill proposes tariffs of up to 500% on nations importing Russian energy. And here's the critical detail. India is named explicitly alongside China and Brazil. If passed, this law would give the US president sweeping authority to impose tariffs with...
Yes, sir. So he put a 25% tariff on India for buying Russian oil. I was at the Indian ambassador's house about a month ago, and all he wanted to talk about is how they're buying less Russian oil. Would you tell the president to relieve the tariff? This stuff works. I really do believe that what he did with India is the chief reason India is now buying substantially less Russian oil. So I hope we pass
strong legal and constitutional backing. In other words, it would turbocharge Trump's tariff machinery. The driving force behind the bill is Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. You may have seen him recently standing beside President Trump aboard Air Force One, speaking openly to the press about private conversations, including discussions with India's ambassador to the United States. Graham revealed that the administration had already imposed a 25% tariff on India for buying Russian oil. He went further, claiming that pressure tactics were working. According to Graham, India began reducing its Russian oil purchases only after tariffs were imposed. That public disclosure of private diplomatic conversations tells you something important about the current approach in Washington. Trust, once built quietly over decades, is now being used as leverage and sometimes sacrificed entirely. The strategy this bill reflects classic Trump doctrine: maximum pressure, sweeping penalties, and transactional diplomacy. The timing is no coincidence. Trade negotiations between India and the United States have stalled for months. By backing this legislation, Trump is clearly strengthening his bargaining position. But there is one major obstacle standing in his way: American law, the legal challenge. A new report reveals that lawsuits against Trump's tariffs are mounting rapidly. So far, more than 1,000 cases have been filed in U.S. courts. And these aren't foreign governments suing Washington. They are American companies, retailers, manufacturers, automakers, consumer brands, ranging from cosmetics to tires, businesses across nearly every sector. Their demand is simple. They want their money back. Because by December last year, the U.S. government had already collected $133 billion in tariff revenue, much of it paid by American companies and ultimately passed on to American consumers. These lawsuits are not random. They are strategic. They've been filed ahead of a crucial U.S. Supreme Court verdict expected tomorrow. The Supreme Court test. The Supreme Court must answer one fundamental question: are Trump's tariffs legal? To impose them, President Trump invoked emergency powers, powers traditionally reserved for wartime or extreme national crises. Think of them as a fire alarm. They're meant to be pulled rarely, but Trump has used these powers to reshape U.S. trade policy on a global scale. That's why the issue has reached America's highest court. If the court rules against the president, the consequences would be massive. The U.S. government could be forced to refund billions of dollars in tariff collections. Refunds wouldn't be automatic. Companies would need court rulings, which explains why more than 1,000 lawsuits are already in motion. The political gamble. The odds are uncertain. The Supreme Court has a conservative majority. 6 of the 9 justices lean conservative, and 3 were appointed by Trump himself. The president is betting on that advantage, but it's far from guaranteed. During earlier hearings, even conservative judges expressed skepticism. They questioned the legal foundation of using emergency powers to enforce long-term economic policy. They challenged whether a president can bypass Congress on trade under the banner of emergency. That makes this case a serious test, not just of Trump's authority, but of presidential power itself. Global implications. This ruling won't just affect the United States. Governments, corporations, and financial markets across the world are watching closely. Because if emergency powers can be used to impose unlimited tariffs today, they could be used tomorrow against any country, any industry, at any scale. India knows this. So does China. So does Europe. The world no longer fits neatly into boxes, and increasingly, neither does American power.